What if I told you the most dangerous predator doesn't look dangerous at all? Not the creepy stranger in a dark alley, not the monster hiding under the bed, but the charming coach, the respected businessman, the fun uncle, the generous billionaire who throws parties and shakes hands with politicians. That's where this gets uncomfortable, because the psychology of sexual abusers isn't about horns and red eyes. It's about manipulation, power, control, and sometimes a smile so convincing you trust them with your kids. And here's the first hard truth. Most sexual abuse doesn't happen by force. It happens by grooming. And if you don't understand how grooming works, you can't see it coming. So today, we're going deep into the dark psychology of sexual abusers, into how their minds operate, into why some of them rise to power instead of prison, and into the uncomfortable reality that sometimes society protects them. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see power, charm, and even your own circle. Let's start with a simple question. Why do people abuse? Is it just evil? Is it mental illness? Is it trauma? The real answer is more complicated, and honestly, more disturbing. Many sexual abusers are not psychotic. They're not out of touch with reality. They know exactly what they're doing. And here's the second hard truth. A large number of them don't feel empathy the way you do. Imagine touching a hot stove. You feel pain instantly, right? Your brain says, "That hurts. Stop." Empathy works the same way. When you see someone suffering, your brain should say, "That hurts. Stop." For some abusers, that signal is weak or missing. But here's where it gets darker. It's not always about sexual desire. It's about power, control, dominance, the thrill of getting away with something. And in the United States, where status and influence can open doors, power becomes the ultimate shield. Think about high-profile cases like Jeffrey Epstein. On the outside, wealthy financier, private jets, private island, elite connections. Behind the scenes, systematic abuse of minors, grooming, trafficking, and the most chilling part, he didn't hide in the shadows. He hosted parties, he networked, he leveraged influence. He created an environment where victims felt small, and he felt untouchable. That's not just deviance, that's strategy. And this is where psychology gets terrifying. Many sexual abusers carefully select victims who are vulnerable. Kids from unstable homes, teenagers craving attention, young people seeking mentorship. They don't usually start with assault. They start with kindness, gifts, compliments, special treatment. Don't tell anyone. This is just between us. That sentence alone has destroyed countless childhoods. And here's a hook you need to think about. If abuse always started with violence, it would be easier to stop. But it doesn't. It starts with trust. Let's talk about grooming in simple terms. Imagine someone slowly turning the volume up on a song. You don't notice it getting louder because it happens gradually. That's grooming. A hug that lasts a little too long. A joke that crosses the line. A secret that feels special. A boundary that shifts 1 inch at a time. By the time something clearly wrong happens, the victim is already psychologically trapped. They might feel confused, guilty, complicit, like they somehow allowed it. That confusion is not an accident. It's engineered. Now, here's another uncomfortable truth. Not all abusers were abused as children. We love that narrative because it feels neat. Cause and effect. But research shows that while some abusers have trauma histories, many do not. What they often share instead, narcissistic traits, entitlement, a belief that rules don't apply to them, a mindset of "I deserve this." And when you combine entitlement with power, you get danger. Let's pause here and ask something big. Why do so many powerful men get exposed years later? Why not immediately? Because power changes how people respond. If a regular guy says something inappropriate at work, he gets reported. If a powerful executive does it, people hesitate. If I speak up, will I lose my job? If I accuse him, will anyone believe me? That hesitation is oxygen for abusers. And in elite circles, silence can become culture. He didn't operate alone in social spaces. He surrounded himself with influential people, creating a sense of legitimacy. Now, let's be careful and clear. Not everyone who ever met him was involved in crimes. But proximity to power creates confusion and fear. And here's the psychology trick. When someone is powerful, your brain automatically assigns them credibility. It's called authority bias. If they're rich, famous, connected, or charismatic, we assume competence and morality. That assumption can blind entire communities. Now here's another hook. What if the most dangerous trait in an abuser isn't aggression, it's likability? Studies on predatory behavior show that many offenders are socially skilled. They read people well, they mirror emotions, they know how to appear generous. In fact, some are deeply invested in public image, charity work, community leadership, religious involvement, because reputation is armor. Let me give you a real-life type of example that happens across America every year. A high school coach, loved by parents, always volunteering, staying late to help certain students, buying them meals, driving them home. At first, it looks like mentorship. Over time, it becomes isolation. Isolation becomes dependency. Dependency becomes control. And control becomes abuse. And by the time accusations surface, the community says, "No way, not him." That denial, it's part of the pattern, because the human brain hates cognitive dissonance. We don't like holding two opposing ideas at once. He's a great guy. He harmed children. Our brains struggle to merge those. So many people choose denial. That denial protects abusers. Now, let's talk about pedophilia specifically. Pedophilia is a sexual attraction to prepubescent children. But here's something critical. Not everyone with that attraction acts on it. Acting on it is a choice, a criminal choice. And when someone crosses that line, we're no longer talking about thoughts. We're talking about exploitation. The darkest reality. Some abusers justify their behavior in twisted ways. They're mature for their age. They wanted it. I'm teaching them. These are cognitive distortions, mental tricks people use to reduce guilt. It's self-deception on steroids. And here's another hook. If you want to understand predators, study how they rationalize. Because their justifications are the gateway to their actions. Now let's go deeper. Why do some abusers escalate? Why does it go from inappropriate comments to grooming to trafficking networks? Power addiction. Yes, addiction. Not to sex, to dominance. Every time they get away with something, the brain releases dopamine, reward, excitement, thrill. And like any addiction, tolerance builds. They need bigger risks to feel the same rush. That's how someone can go from small boundary violations to orchestrating complex systems of abuse. And here's where it intersects with wealth and influence in America. When you have money, you can buy silence. NDAs, high-powered lawyers, private settlements. When you have connections, you can delay investigations. When you have status, victims doubt themselves. Maybe no one will believe me. That doubt is a predator's best friend. Now, here's a serious moment. Abuse is not rare. According to U.S. data, millions of children and adults report experiencing some form of sexual abuse in their lifetime, and that's just reported cases. Think about that. This isn't a fringe issue. It's woven into schools, churches, sports teams, families, corporations. And here's another hook. Most victims know their abuser. It's not random. It's relational. And that makes it harder to process. Imagine your brain trying to reconcile. This person cared about me. This person hurt me. That internal conflict can silence victims for decades. Shame becomes a prison, and abusers rely on that shame. Now, let's talk about something even more disturbing. Group dynamics. In some cases, abuse doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in networks. How? Because when powerful people validate each other's behavior, morality erodes. If everyone around you laughs at the inappropriate joke, it feels normal. If everyone turns a blind eye, it feels safe. This is how toxic cultures form. Not overnight, gradually, one compromise at a turn. Now, here's a question that might hit hard. Why don't victims always report immediately? Fear, confusion, manipulation, threats, financial dependence, emotional attachment. And sometimes, there were children who didn't even have the vocabulary to describe what happened. That silence isn't weakness, it's trauma. Trauma changes the brain. It affects memory processing, it fragments timelines. It creates delayed reactions, which is why some victims come forward years later, and society often asks, why now? But the real question should be, how hard was it to speak at all? Now let's circle back to power. High-profile scandals in the U.S., from entertainment to politics to finance, have revealed a pattern. Charismatic men, gatekeepers, opportunity providers. They create environments where access is currency. You want this job? Come to my private meeting. You want mentorship? Keep this between us. The psychological leverage is immense, especially when careers, dreams, or social mobility are involved. And here's another hook. When ambition meets exploitation, predators see opportunity. That's not about lust. That's about control. Now I want to add something important. Understanding psychology does not excuse behavior. It explains it. And explanation is power. Because if you can recognize patterns, you can interrupt them. So what are the red flags? Excessive secrecy, isolation of a specific person, over-the-top generosity with strings attached, boundary testing, gaslighting. If you tell anyone, they won't believe you. If you say something, you'll ruin everything. If someone constantly reminds you how much power they have, pay attention. That's not confidence. That's intimidation. Now let's end with something that matters. The real power in America isn't wealth. It's awareness. The more we understand grooming, manipulation, narcissism, and authority bias, the less oxygen predators have. His case showed something crucial. Even powerful people can fall. Even networks can unravel. Even silence can break. And here's the final hook. The opposite of abuse isn't punishment. It's prevention. Prevention starts with conversations like this. Teaching kids about boundaries. Teaching adults about manipulation tactics. Encouraging reporting without shame. And refusing to let charm override accountability. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like success stories. And that's exactly why we have to look deeper. If this made you uncomfortable, good. Awareness isn't supposed to feel cozy. It's supposed to wake you up. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never let power blind you to patterns. Because the most dangerous predators don't hide in the dark. They hide in plain sight.